everyone. Welcome to the Mindful Journey podcast, where every conversation is an invitation to slow down, dig deep, and expand the way we think about healing, purpose, and moreover, conscious living. I'm your host, Sana, listeners, and today I am really honored to sit with Chef Mark Reinfeld, a pioneer of plant based cuisine, a teacher of culinary compassion, and a soul who's journeyed from the streets of Stony Brook to the silent kitchens of Kauai. Now, he's not just a chef, he's a food activist, a meditator, a storyteller, and a recent inductee into the Vegan Hall of Fame. So, from traveling across post revolution Europe to founding the award winning Blossoming Lotus, Mark's path, listeners, is a recipe of curiosity, intention, and deep service. So, whether you are vegan curious or already living the lifestyle, this conversation will expand your heart and palate alike. So grab your favorite plant-based treat and let's quickly dive in. So Chef Mark, welcome to the show. And I'm really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, son. I really appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So, first of all, Chef Mark, I'm personally very excited for this one because we all know that food, you know, it's a symbol of warmth, love, um, personal story,
Mm.
origin, and so many emotions. But then
Yes.
also with what you're going to share with us, it looks like it's also showing us a way of having a purpose, and as I mentioned in the intro, conscious living. So first of all, congrats on being inducted into the Vegan Hall of Fame. So I
Thank you very much. It was a surprise and an honor when that occurred.
Absolutely. So, if you can tell us about your journey as a plant-based chef, I mean, how and why did you choose that path?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. So I grew up eating pretty much anything. I wasn't really thinking about what I ate. I
Mm,
had a longing to travel, and I studied in my junior year of college. I studied at the London School of Economics, and I started traveling and
mm,
really started to experience like what I would call like deep joy in the freedom of travel during that time. I returned to the States and I finished my college degree, but I loved
mhm,
traveling so much that I took a year off before I applied to law school, and I took a year off. And then during that time, actually, I went to Paris, and I was working as an au pair in Paris, and I was reading a book, Journey of Awakening by Ram Dass, and it was an introduction to different meditative practices. So I had a lot of freedom of my time. So that's when I first began what I would call like consider like more of a sitting practice or
mhm,
mindfulness, and was there for several weeks, and then I hitchhiked from Amsterdam to Berlin. I was in Berlin when the wall opened up, and then continued the journey through Poland and then Prague during the revolution, and Yugoslavia and Greece. And I made my way to Israel onto a kibbutz. And on that kibbutz, I started seeing animals in their natural setting, and I had some experiences that made me not want to eat them. And so I became vegetarian during that time. And then after that trip, I went to directly to India for about 4 weeks, which, as you know, is a vegetarian friendly culture. And just seeing the cows roaming the streets, it just solidified my desire to be vegetarian. And then I did the Mount Everest trek in Nepal, and during that trip, I would see like the hill tribes and the little villages and baby lambs and all these beautiful animals. So it really solidified that, and I did have an opportunity to be up at it was about 18,000 feet at a place called Kalapatar in Nepal, which had the most expansive view of Everest. And I was up there early in the morning before other people and just was experiencing that level of beauty and freedom. And it really started making these changes on the inside, and the solidified more of my, focus on mindfulness and trying to meditate and quiet my mind. So when I returned home after all those experiences, I did go to law school for a semester after the joy that I was experiencing and reading Walt Whitman and just feeling this incredible freedom of spirit. Law school didn't hold the same appeal. And so I left law school, traveled out west, started working in a natural food store. And I'd always loved cooking as a child. So I worked my way up through the ranks at the health food store, started doing consulting. I eventually went to Hawaii for a 2-week vacation that lasted for 8 years, and that was when we opened the Blossoming Lotus restaurant. I had actually had a chef service that I had started called the Blossoming Lotus in Malibu that I had started prior to that. And for me, the idea of the blossoming lotus, it represents like an evolution of consciousness. And I felt like that applying to bringing mindfulness and compassion and the idea of nonviolence and ahimsa into our food choices reminded me of that idea of like the blossoming lotus, of this evolving consciousness. So that's where that name came from. And so we had a restaurant in Hawaii. I started doing cookbooks and then trainings. And so I got deeply immersed as like an educator. And I feel really inspired to show people how easy it is to create plant-based foods that taste delicious. Part of the experience at the restaurant was I'd been spent some times in a retreat setting, and I wanted people to be able to experience like the mindfulness and the love that was placed into foods in a retreat setting and in a commercial setting.
Oh my goodness. Um, I'm very honest, 30 minutes is not at all justified to get these experiences. I mean, you have traveled almost the entire world.
Mm,
You have had the um, experiences of exploring different cultures, um, not only from a cultural perspective, but towards the respect and um, the dedication towards the flora and fauna. I mean,
mhm.
that is a hell of a lifetime. Wow.
Yeah. That was a very condensed, condensed version.
I know. Thank you so much, Chef Mark. Um, and it's really incredible how travel shaped your palate and your
Mhm,
philosophy. Um, Now I'm wondering though, Chef Mark, that for listeners who might still associate veganism with restriction, you know,
mhm.
just like a trend or uh, more from a lifestyle point of view, what would you say to them?
Well, I think it's that's a valid question, and that on the surface it seems like you're limiting things. So basically, for those of the listeners that aren't aware, so a vegetarian diet just excludes meat from animals. So no, beef or chicken or pork or fish. Vegan, or some people say plant-based, eliminates the byproducts from the animal. So that would be the dairy products and eggs. And people make that choice for different reasons. Usually it's health or medical reasons, environmental or sustainability reasons, or for me, it was just a connection for animal welfare. But
Yeah.
what tends to happen is, firstly, you have an inner sense of kind of unity in your mind if you want to create, and when you learn about the facts about what goes on in factory farming and the implications for sustainability, there's a sense of like living your values. And then also, what happens is you start to get more curious, like you use the word curious and creative. So when I was
Mm.
on a meat eating diet, there's probably just 6 or 7 items in my rotation that I would rotate through. But then once I started becoming more plant based, like And partly that's my travel experience of you start looking at all these international cultures and the way spice blends and sauces all bring foods to life. So my the variety of foods that I eat now is probably at least 10 times greater than it was when I was eating a meat-based diet. So it's a valid question, and there's amazing alternative products that you can create all the proteins. They have amazing plant-based dairy, actually
Mm.
some plant-based egg products on the market. So there's a lot of innovation occurring that you I mean, the way I teach my classes and my trainings, people have no sense of deprivation, and a lot of times they don't even realize the food is plant-based.
I know that because um so lately in India also you know uh, there's a lot of brands that are bringing plant-based meat
Mm.
here. So there's one kind of vegetable called as jackfruit. Uh,
Yes.
and it is so delicious, Chef Mark.
Uh-huh.
Oh. I mean, right from childhood, I have been eating this. My mother used to cook that for me, but
Mm.
when I grew up, I realized it is just like meat. It's just
Uh-huh.
like it-
It has that same texture, yes.
texture, yeah, just like chicken. Then you have almond milk or
Mm.
soy milk, tofu. I mean, they are actually brilliant replacements.
Yes, and, I just love showing people that so like you mentioned, there's these different layers when we talk about eating, and it's connected to comfort and tradition and rituals and family and sense of belonging. And so what I love doing is just help to replicate and show the students in my classes how to replicate these flavors and textures and tastes that we grew up with. So a lot of times there's just not a sense of deprivation, which I think is a big concern for people in making like diet changes.
Hmm. That really makes sense, Chef Mark. And how would you connect food with mindfulness? Is it the way of eating food or kind of, connecting with the food we are eating? I mean, how would you connect both of them?
That's a wonderful question. So part of my experience I is shaped by I I've done several Vipassana retreats or 10-day silent retreats. And I remember the food at the retreat being very simple but very flavorful. And so I actually I would manage the kitchen for retreats. I would sit for a retreat, and then I started managing the kitchen at the retreat center where I was at. And so there would be this mindfulness of a meditative approach to taking a moment before the food was served to just be mindful. There was mindfulness in the kitchen as the food was prepared. And I like to say that the kitchen is like an extension of life outside of the kitchen. So I always encourage my students to leave their cares at the door and just be focused in the present moment and keep a positive, gentle attitude as they're learning, and to really cultivate this feeling of gratitude and appreciation and love for the people you're preparing the food for. And I think many people can notice that difference. So on one level, it's just oftentimes our minds are very scattered and chaotic. And so cooking as a ritual could be a time to really bring your awareness to that and just to let your mind slow down, let your creative juices come to life. So there's that aspect of it. And then the way that I see mindfulness uh, in terms of like food in general is that we look at not just, "Oh, this food tastes good," but what is can the idea of food as medicine, and that food can either bring us healing or bring us illness. And so when we make our food choices, are we being mindful about our food choices with regard to, like, the healing qualities? And then also with respect to plant-based foods, personally, I know that there's a plant-based solution to every health challenge we face. I firmly believe that after interacting with being in this for decades and interacting with doctors and nutritionists, and then I feel like the mindfulness should extend to, well, what is the impact of my food choices on not only my health, but the environment? And so when you look at some of the statistics of like how much water is consumed, how much land is consumed, is utilized, the energy use, the pollution, topsoil loss, all of these factors, greenhouse gas emissions, like things that are associated with our food choices. The plant-based choice is way more environmentally sustainable, and so that's another level of mindfulness. And then for me, who having been influenced by the idea of nonviolence and ahimsa for many years, to me, extending our love and compassion, not just to our family and friends or people we know or our pets, but to bring that out to all other life forms. And you can embrace the cow and the chicken and the pig the same way you could a dog and a cat. Then that mindfulness is, well, being aware of that, do I really want to be involved in slaughtering them? So that those are the levels, the multiple levels of how I see mindfulness connected to our food choices.
Mm, very well put, Chef Mark. And one point I would like to agree and at least reiterate that when the food is prepared with love and warmth, you can actually feel the difference in the
Mm,
taste,
mm.
the aroma, the way, all the spices, the ingredients they're blending. I mean, it's a whole lot of difference. And that is such a beautiful form of mindfulness. And of course, if we look at the bigger picture for our planet, for our environment, the commitment, the dedication, it's also a way of practicing mindfulness and respect towards our you know, um, animal friends as well.
Totally, yeah. And it's, everyone's at their own place and their own way of perceiving things. And I like to say that the vegan police are never present in any of my classes. Like I don't require people to be vegetarian, or even usually it's the veg curious. I just like sharing the information and my own personal food philosophies.
Yeah, I think that's once again a very mindful way to embrace, uh, you know, uh, veganism. And then Chef Mark, you often speak of the three doors of veganism:
Mhm.
ethical, the environmental, and then the health reasons. And you definitely explained that. Um, which door did you walk through first, and how do you see people move between them?
That another wonderful question. So I I do like in that, like I mentioned, the health or medical is one door, the environmental or sustainability factor is the second door, and concerns for animal welfare would be the third door. All the doors go into the same room. So what I found in my experiences, regardless of what initially brought you to the path, once you're in the room, you can learn about these other reasons and embrace them as your own. And for me personally, I became vegetarian through the animal welfare and just the idea of compassion and nonviolence with our food choices. At the time, I wasn't aware of the what went on in the mass scale dairy and egg production, but
Mhm.
noticed that if I were eating a meal that had a lot of dairy in it, I would get super congested. And so my body was kind of telling me to go. So I would say going for vegetarian, I was through door number three, the animal welfare door. But then from vegetarian to vegan, it was initially more of the health door of just feeling better. And then I learned about the environmental factors, and then it all kind of blended together. And most of the students in my trainings, they've come through the health door, and I've witnessed incredible transformations with people with like heart conditions and diabetes and high cholesterol and a lot of other health concerns that have been able to be addressed on a plant-based diet. And the stories are on the surface somewhat miraculous, uh, but when you hear so many of them, you start to connect the dots. And so I would say that health or medical door is still the primary door that draws people to the lifestyle. And then again, you could start being educated on the other factors.
Hmm. And I mean, this is one of my favorite questions, Chef Mark. So I can definitely feel that you make plant-based food taste amazing. I mean, I have seen how amazing dishes can be made through broccoli,
Mhm,
cauliflower, chickpeas.
mhm.
Uh, mm, Such tasty dishes can be made. So I would love to know what are your seven culinary keys to unlocking flavor in plant-based dishes?
Okay, thank you. I love sharing this, and I've been doing this for over 2 decades. So I've been really learning a lot over the years. And when I was thinking about how I could share that information with others, I came upon the idea of these seven culinary keys. And I have an ebook on them, and also I have a free preview that I could share with your listeners. Basically, the seven keys, and if you put energy into them, I'm confident that even the most novice cook can become quite adept in the plant-based kitchen. The
Mhm.
first key is palate development. So that's something that takes place over a lifetime of learning how different flavors combine well, different, levels of seasoning, how they impact the flavor of a dish. The second key is, and a big one for people getting started, is I called global spice blends. And so just by having your own spice blend that you could either make on your own or purchase, like an Indian, Italian, Moroccan, Ethiopian, Cajun, there's so many spice blends. With a flick of your hands, you can create this whole world cuisine. So spice blends is the second key. The third key is world sauces. So it's oftentimes using those blends to create sauces such as like a peanut sauce or a pesto or a curry sauce, harissa. These are things that really make your dishes come alive. And most chefs would say it's all about the sauce. The next key is what I refer to as a template recipe
Okay.
approach. And with that, I would consider that my signature teaching style. With that, what you do is I show people how to look at the underlying formula of a recipe, and then by changing the components of that formula, you can create a new flavor profile or recipe. So that's something that in all my years is the big takeaway for students who experience more confidence and creativity in the plant-based kitchen. The next key is what I call the veganizing key. And this is where it touches on what I referred to earlier in the call of where you can create these flavors and textures of the dishes that we grew up with. So it's oftentimes using, like, you can make a cashew cream that can replace a dairy cream. Like you mentioned, almond milk, tofu and tempeh are used, jackfruit. You can even use things like banana blossoms, and there's an amazing array of ingredients that you could use to veganize traditional dishes. The second to last key is what I call superfood nutrition. And this goes back to the food as medicine idea of including superfoods and raw foods and some percentage into our diet. And then the last key is probably the most important, and that's the experimentation key. So for that, it's just keep practicing. I encourage students to have the Thomas Edison approach where there's no failures in the kitchen. You're just learning and accumulating data of what worked and what didn't work, and just really to have this kind and gentle attitude toward yourself. So those are the keys that I love to share.
Wow, that sounds so exciting, Chef. Exciting. And then I love anything made in pesto.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So, very interesting. I mean, before we wrap up, a very interesting um, part of your journey. You observed silence for the first 18 months of opening your restaurant in Kauai. I hope I'm not pronouncing it incorrectly, but That's something unheard because the culinary world, it's kind of, chaotic. So
Yes.
what was that experience like, and what did it teach you about communication and presence?
Mm. That's a great question. So, a little backstory on that is it actually started with my Vipassana retreats, where they were 10-day silent retreats. And I just found that the quieter my mind became and the more that I observed verbal silence, it was more conducive towards mental silence. And I started just really appreciating being in that space and felt like levels of communion that I hadn't experienced before. So, it started by doing those 10-day retreats, and then I actually when the 10-day retreat was over, sometimes I wasn't ready to end my silence, so I would extend it a little bit longer, and then I started experimenting doing, weekends, when I was this was when I was working in San Diego, of observing silence and just really appreciating being in that space. On, one trip to India, I was stayed for a few weeks in silence, and I just there as you know, there's a culture of the Muni Babas, the silent sadhus, and I was connecting with them, and I did, on one trip in India, I was there for 6 months, and I observed silence during that time and went to the Kumbh Mela and was up in the Himalayas, so I was emulating the Muni Babas, the silent sadhus during that time, and as you probably are aware, some of them take it to quite length. So they do 3 year, they'll observe 3 years of silence or 12 years.
Mm.
And somehow it planted in my mind to try to do a 3 year silence. It had just been growing in me. And so when I went to Hawaii, I was initially I was there on a 2 week vacation and I wound up staying for 8 years. Uh, and
Mm.
I was looking to find just a private chef opportunity where I could just be in silence. And then as it turns out, there weren't opportunities like that. And I had all of this experience of doing recipe training and consulting over the years, menu development and recipe training. And so I connected with the person who was managing this cafe in Kauai, and we hit it off. And I was in silence at that time, like writing on a notepad. And then he wanted me to help training, and then he said, "So, well, you're gonna stop being in silence." And I wasn't ready, so I would either use a computer to communicate, or I would have a notepad. It was very wild. It took a very unique, my partner at the time, Gabriel Zingaro, uh, we had a great connection, and I was able to be the silent partner, and just like like you mentioned, the first 18 months of opening the restaurant, was in that silent space. So there's a lot of interesting stories from that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely, chef. And because in popular culture, we imagine the chefs expediting, yelling orders, a lot of chaos and just shouting. But you sitting in silence and channeling flavor through mindfulness, that
Mm,
is, to me, it really is deeply poetic, a bit
mm.
wild, but in the bestest of the best.
I
Really
Thank you.
interesting.
Well, so it was when we did the initial recipes for the cafe, and it was a small cafe. In the and I created the recipes, and then in the instructions, the first instruction was to take a deep breath and to cultivate feelings of love and gratitude. It was actually written into the recipe manual that we had. So it was an effort for me to try to, like I mentioned earlier, bring when you go to a retreat center and you experience the mindfulness and presence that's placed in the food, and like you said, the love and the caring that go into it. I wanted to create something in a commercial setting that anyone off the street who would never go into a retreat center would be able to experience, like, that sense of intention and mindfulness in the commercial setting. So that was what established the Blossoming Lotus on Kauai, was that experience.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful. So, Chef, before we wrap up, if our listeners, I'm very sure they would love to, but if they would like to connect with you
Mhm.
and explore more about your wisdom, your experiences, what would be the best way?
Oh, thank you for that. So going to veganfusion.com, veganfusion.com, where it's my trainings and other services. We have a free newsletter that we send out. Like I mentioned, I can also offer a free preview of the those 7 culinary keys that I can share with you. My signature training is it's a 4 week deep dive culinary immersion that I offer. It's 4 hours a day live with me via Zoom in the comfort of your own kitchen, and we go over all the main techniques in vegan and raw food cuisine. I have my wife's a plant-based naturopathic doctor, and she does 4 food as medicine modules. I have an expert bread baker and pasta maker, so it's very comprehensive. We cover everything from casseroles and legume dishes to desserts and bread baking and fermenting and raw foods. It's a very comprehensive program, and all that information is available on the website. So people could contact me there if they have any questions. And I love working with people to make it work out where they can attend.
All in one. That's wonderful. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes, Chef. And thank you. Thank you so much because you are reminding us how to eat with presence, compassion, gratitude, and creativity.
Mm,
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. Your journey, it's a testament that food is more than sustenance.
mm,
It is a language of love, activism, healing, and a huge gratitude towards our Mother Earth. So thank you
mm.
so much.
Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate the conversation.
So to all the listeners out there, if this episode inspired you to rethink your plate, just check out Mark's work. And I have all the links in the show notes for you. And you know, it isn't about recipes, as Mark says. It is about remembering our connection to ourselves, each other, and this beautiful, beautiful planet.
Mm.
Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay grounded on the mindful journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much.